שחזרנו לגוש קטיף, חזרנו לרפיח, חזרנו לח'אן יונס, חזרנו לעזה שלנו. בת השם, נלך ונוסיף, בקרוב נגיע גם לדמשק וגם לביירות.
In the heart of Israel's army, hardline followers of an extremist ideology.
They believe they are in a divine mission to redeem the entire world and conquer all the promised lands.
Amongst the most fervent believers, graduates from this elite pre-military academy, where rabbis openly preach radical views.
אז בואו נקרא לילד בשמו ונגיד, בואו, תהיו עבדים שלנו, יהיה לכם הרבה יותר טוב.
And alumni include some of Israel's most senior commanders. We've been analysing hundreds of hours of the Academy's lectures and their impact on the mindset of those who've been fighting in Gaza, where tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed.
That's the only way that the Arabs understand losing the war, it's losing a land. And this is a Jewish state, and people around us need to understand that we are coming back to our land forever.
A new term is just getting underway in the Bnei David pre-military academy, built in an Israeli settlement inside the occupied West Bank. Students come here to study the Torah and strengthen their religious conviction before entering mandatory military service. So this place was founded more than 25 years ago as a means of trying to encourage more young religious men to join the Israeli army. It's since become something of a national institution, but it's also accused of promoting a hardline radical ideology. Traditionally, Israel's military has been dominated by secular rather than religious officers. That's no longer the case. And Bnei David boasts of being behind a quiet revolution within the army. We were allowed in to meet students earlier this summer when the bloodshed in Gaza was still ongoing. Gabriel and Aviel will join the military when they finish this academic year.
I'm not just excited to go to the army because of the things I've seen and because everyone serves. I'm now excited to go to the army because I believe in it in a much deeper way.
War is never good, but if it's the thing that we need to do to get peace, so we can live in our country safely and to fight the darkness, so that's what we'll do.
So tell me again, with the top two rows of where
the top two rows, like I mentioned, starting from there and finishing here, were alumni that were killed before the 7th of October.
Around 4,000 graduates have served in the war in Gaza, including in senior roles. More than 24 have been killed since October the 7th. Rabbi Glustein is a former pupil who's been combining deployments in Gaza with lectures for current students. What is the lesson that you hope they take from you when they go into the battlefield?
I think that one of the main things is to always remember that we're fighting not out of hate for the enemy, but out of love. Love for our country, love for our ideals, love for freedom, love for better humanity.
You do here in Israel, there are no innocents in Gaza.
I'm not fighting a personal person. I'm fighting a way of life. And sadly, Gaza people have decided that their way of life discriminates, hates, and is racist towards the Jewish society, the Israeli society.
But it's lectures here at Bnei David that contain ultranationalist, racist rhetoric directed at Palestinians. The Academy has uploaded hundreds of lessons to YouTube, most about Jewish theology. But others we've examined alongside a specialist researcher, filmed during the war in Gaza, use that religious lens to frame the contemporary conflict. Here, Rabbi Kashtiel, a leading teacher, cites a biblical story about the prophet Joshua, who led the Jews to victory in the Promised Land.
מצוות יישוב הארץ שמוטלת על יהושע בן נון, מוריש התורה, היא לכבוש את הארץ, לא בגלל בעיות ביטחוניות. והקדוש ברוך הוא אומר ליהושע, אתם צריכים לכבוש את הארץ. לאורכה ולרוחבה, כי ככה מופיעה התורה.
Unlike the official narrative of the Israeli army, war, he implies, isn't about self-defense, but conquest and creating a greater Israel.
בוודאי שאנחנו נלחמים להצלת העם, אבל לא פחות מזה לכיבושה של הארץ.
In another lecture, a rabbi draws an analogy between Gaza and a savage, ancient battle between Jews and their enemy, the Amalek.
כשהמלך יוצא למלחמה, הוא על כל הקופה. הורג ילדים, נשים, כי זה העניין של המלך. אז כשאתה נלחם איתו, אתה לא יכול להתלחם איתו כמו עם עמים אחרים. והנביא אומר לו, אל תחמול עליו. והמשמעות המבצעית, ואם אתה מאיש עד אישה, מעולל ועד יונק, פסוקים שקשה להכיל אותם בכלל, להרוג תינוקות.
Rabbi Zur talks specifically about the conflict in Gaza and explains the biblical rationale behind the brutality.
כן, אני חושב שזה ככה ההבנה הפשוטה, נדמה לי, זה ההבנה הפשוטה. זאת אומרת, בזה שאתה מרחם על אכזרים, ומאפשר את הקיום של הרוע להישאר בעולם, אתה בזה עצמו, אתה מתאכזר על הרחמנים, מסכנים, מה עשו רחמנים ששארת אותם עם כל העמלקים? בסוף הם פוגעים באנשים טובים.
Yair Nehorai is an Israeli lawyer and researcher dedicated to exposing the teachings of the academy and what he sees as a dangerous attempt by religious hardliners to change the country's identity.
They are in a mission from God. And God demands that the Torah law will be imposed on all of the promised land, including, of course, Gaza and parts of Lebanon and Syria, and transforming those cities into Jewish cities.
Some people listening to these clips might imagine that these are the words of fringe radicals on the outermost sections of society.
The religious Zionist, Messianic religious Zionist party, this is their ideology. It's not some rabbi who is talking some ideas, his idea. This is exactly their ideology. And as we know, Bibi relies on them to keep on his job as a prime minister. Therefore, he dances to their music.
Last year, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited Bnei David, vowing total victory over Hamas. His graduates include 2 serving brigadier generals, the commander in charge of forces in the occupied West Bank, and Netanyahu's military secretary also studied there. Other alumni have held leading roles in government departments and the media.
They discovered, or thought about it, and rightly so, that if they will conquer the army, that will be their gate to conquer the Israeli society. And that's what they did.
There has previously been criticism of Bnei David within Israel, prompted by Yair's work. But the academy has been embraced and funded by the state and inspired other similar institutes. Here's one of its founders, Rabbi Eli Sedan, being awarded the country's highest prize in 2016 by Israel's leaders. And here he is earlier this year, talking about Gaza, blaming the entire population for the October 7th attacks.
המלחמה הזאת חייבת להיגמר בניצחון מוחלט. הם כולם נושאים באחריות למה שקרה בשמחת תורה, וגם לכל מה שקרה לפני כן. לא יהיו עוד עזתים בעזה.
In an interview last year with a right-wing TV channel, Rabbi Levinstein, another co-founder of the academy, promotes the idea of forcing Gazans abroad.
כל המדינות שכל כך אוהבים את הפלסטינים ואת החמאס, נפנק כל מדינה מערבית, הערבית שכל כך אוהבת אותה, נפנק אותם, נחלק את 2 מיליון, כל אחד יקבל איזה 100,000, צרפתים אוהבים אותם, האנגלים אוהבים אותם.
כמו גננת שמחלקת סוכריות.
כן, מחלקת, כולם כל כך אוהבים אותם, מפנק את כל העולם ברוע.
Similar extreme views have spread right across Israeli society since the brutal October 7th attacks. But here is future soldiers being indoctrinated. We spoke to the Academy's CEO, Lior Shtul. What is it you teach your students here, given they're going into the Israeli army, about the Palestinians?
You know, they are here. And I think part of them, or most of them, will stay here. If we speak about Jewish nation, they must know that they are living in a Jewish state. But the problem starts when the terror get in.
We also saw, for example, a video from Rabbi Eli Sedan in which he says that there are no innocents in Gaza.
When you say there is no innocent people in Gaza, you mean that there is a group in Gaza that fighting against us. In the kindergartens in Israel, you see light, you see flowers, you see sunshine. You go into the kindergarten in Gaza, you see Shahid, you see rockets. This is a big difference. This is a nation, a group that's thinking about death, and we are thinking about life.
If you're teaching students who are going into the army that there are no innocents in Gaza, that the entire land here all belongs to the Jewish people, that you're fighting a war against Amalek, doesn't that encourage people to effectively see everyone, the entire Palestinian people, as the enemy and really push them towards committing war crimes?
We are believing not to kill nobody that are not in the war zone. You see how much effort Israel pay to protect the civilian of Gaza.
Together, we watch the clips we've sifted through.
והמשמעות המבצעית ואימתה מאיש אדישה מעולל ועד יונק.
It was another time. It's not meaning today. When you need to make the difference between the spiritual world and the material world.
Because it seems like the purpose of the lecture is to take the example from before and
by the way, Ravi Tzur teaching Bible.
Soldiers going into battle, having been exposed to these kinds of lessons, would then basically see any person there as the enemy. And so that explains why you have, on the face of it, such a high number of civilian casualties.
Orders. There is orders in the army. There is no troops of Bnei David. We are mixing in all the troops. So if someone sees someone kill that he don't need to kill him, take him to jail. Nobody from our guys going to jail.
הם כולם נושאים באחריות למה שקרה בשמחת תורה.
If I were to ask the Israeli army, is the entire Gazan population your enemy? They would say no.
No.
But you say yes.
They say yes.
The Israeli army would say no.
The army say all the people in Gaza are an enemy, but we are separate the terrorists and the civilians.
The Israeli army spokespeople, whether people believe it or not, they would say we are not
fighting civilian people.
They would say we are not, the Gazan people are not our enemy. They would say Hamas is our enemy. That's the difference. And that's what between you and them, and that's why your critics say that you're a radicalizing influence on the army.
But nobody show after 35 years that we have a radical influence on the army.
Maybe that's part of what we're seeing in unfold in Gaza right now. That's why the ICC says that Netanyahu and Gallant are war criminals, and that the ICJ says that there's plausible case for genocide.
Everybody know what we think about them. Yeah, okay. You know, we know the political issue of the ICC and ICJ. But it's radical because Israel will not stop till they demolish Hamas.
We don't have evidence that Bnei David graduates in particular have committed war crimes. But the Academy is a driving force behind the growth of religious ultranationalists within Israel's army, which has been accused of and forced to deny committing genocide.
Amen.
Videos promoted by the Academy online provide a glimpse into the former students and staff who've been fighting inside Gaza. Here's Yoel Rachel, head of alumni relations, calling for the return of Israeli settlements in the territory. And here's another graduate addressing troops before battle, drawing on both the biblical stories of the prophet Joshua and the Amalek.
לא נשכח לרגע ולא נסלח לעולם את אשר עשה לנו עמלק ביום שמחת תורה האחרון. לוחמים, הלילה נפרוץ לעזה. עזה, איבר חי מגופה של מדינת ישראל, נקרע ממנה. הלילה אנחנו נכרות את ראש הנחש. הלילה נקיים את צוואתם של יהושע בן נון.
I was stationed in the Gush Etzion area.
Louise served alongside graduates from Bnei David in the occupied West Bank
It was a very hard time.
and was shocked by their views.
Questioning myself a lot about what we are doing.
What kind of things were they saying?
The classical justification that all the land is ours, that Palestinian people don't exist, they are Arab immigrants that are not related to the land, that everything is ours. And I really can see this process of the legitimization and normalization of this kind of discourses.
Do you think institutions like Bnei David are part of it?
It influences a lot because all the idea is to prepare you for the reality you need to deal with as a soldier. And if you have these mindsets, and we as soldiers, we have a lot of autonomy, like acting on the ground, it definitely influence the mind of people who just came from high school and now are holding a weapon in the West Bank.
The academy insists what's taught here leads students towards greater humanity, not hatred. There is clear compassion for fellow Israelis, but also deep hostility to Palestinians. Bnei David's growing influence is a window into how the Israeli state and its army has become increasingly infused with radical views.